The first thing Fletcher Knox saw when he stepped into his uncle's abandoned ranch house was a knife pointed straight at his chest. The second thing he noticed was that the hand holding it was trembling. Dust floated through the broken windows in slow golden beams as the late afternoon sun poured into the ruined kitchen. The air smelled like old wood, smoke, and something else. Fear. Fletcher had not been back to Knox Ranch in 3 years. 3 long years of cattle drives, lonely trails, and trying to forget the telegram that said his Uncle Silas had died of sudden heart failure. Now, the ranch was his, the last of the Knox bloodline. But the house did not look like a place that had simply lost its owner. It looked like something had chased the life out of it. The front door had hung crooked on its hinges, and the barn roof had partially collapsed. Windows were shattered, and the wind moved through the rooms like a restless ghost. Fletcher had expected decay. He had not expected a woman. She stood near the cold hearth, her back against the wall, green eyes wide and sharp as broken glass. She looked about 25. Her auburn hair was tangled and dusty. Her blue dress was torn at the shoulder, stained with dirt and what looked like dried blood. But her eyes were what stopped him cold. They were not weak eyes. They were hunted eyes. "Easy," Fletcher said softly, raising both hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." The knife did not lower. Outside, the dry wind scraped against the house boards. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Or maybe it was not a coyote at all. "This is my land," Fletcher continued carefully. "Used to be my uncle's." "A Silas Knox!" Something flickered across her face at the name. "Your uncle," she whispered, her voice rough like she had not used it in days. "Then you're too late." Fletcher's jaw tightened. "Too late for what?" She gave a short, bitter laugh. "They've already been here." The way she said it made the empty house feel suddenly crowded. Fletcher studied her more closely. She favored her left side. She was hurt. And despite the dirt and fear, there was something refined about her. She did not look like a drifter or a saloon girl. She looked educated, careful, out of place in a ruin like this. "Who's been here?" he asked. Her grip on the knife tightened. "Men who don't care whose land this is. Men who kill for less than this place is worth." The word kill hung between them. Fletcher felt heat rise in his chest. Yet his uncle had been strong as an oak. He did not just fall dead in a barn. "What are you saying about my uncle?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, and in that hesitation he saw it. She knew something. Before she could answer, the sound reached them. Hoofbeats. Not one horse. Several. Fast. The woman's face drained of color. The knife slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. "They're here," she breathed. "God help us." The hoofbeats thundered into the ranch yard and stopped. Boots hit the porch. Rough male laughter drifted through the broken door. Fletcher moved for his gun belt. She grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "No," she hissed. "You can't fight them. There are too many." "I'm not letting anyone walk into my home," he said. Her fingers dug into his sleeve. "They're hunting me," she whispered. "Because I'm untouched, unmarried. They plan to sell me across the border." The words hit him like a blow. White slavery. He had heard rumors, whispers on long trails, girls disappearing from small towns, judges looking the other way. "If they think I'm already claimed," she rushed on, her cheeks burning with shame, "they might leave. I become worthless to them." Understanding dawned on Fletcher's face. "You want me to pretend? I'm not asking." Her voice hardened like steel. She snatched up the knife and pressed it against her own throat. "Either you help me fool them, or I end this before they touch me." The front door burst open. 3 men stepped inside. The one in front was tall and thin, with eyes as cold as winter stone. Spurs jingled as he walked in like he owned the place. "Well now," he said slowly. "Looks like someone got here first." Fletcher made his choice. He pulled the woman against him, rough but careful. He ran a hand through her tangled hair and loosened his own shirt. She understood instantly and pressed herself against his chest. "Private property," Fletcher drawled lazily. "You're interrupting." The tall man's eyes swept over them, taking in her exposed shoulder, her flushed face, the way she clung to him. A slow smile spread across his mouth. "Name's Jake Thornton," he said. "We're looking for something that belongs to us." "Nothing here belongs to you," Fletcher replied evenly. "This is Knox land." At the name, Thornton's smile thinned. "Knox," he repeated. "Oh, you'd be Silas's nephew." Fletcher did not blink. Thornton stepped closer. "We're tracking a school teacher. Auburn hair. Pretty thing. Stole some papers from Judge Morrison. You seen anyone like that?" Fletcher let out a lazy laugh. "You boys been drinking? This is my woman. Been waiting for me." He felt her heart hammering against him. Thornton studied them for a long, heavy moment. Then his voice changed. "Funny thing," he said softly. "Silas Knox asked too many questions before he died." Fletcher's blood turned to ice. "You killed him," he said. Thornton shrugged. "Heart failure can happen quick when a man learns things he shouldn't." Rage burned through Fletcher, but he held steady. Outside, another rider called out. More men were circling the house. Thornton's hand drifted to his gun. "Hand over the teacher," he said calmly. "And maybe you live." The woman suddenly lifted her head from Fletcher's chest. Her voice no longer trembled. "My name is Evelyn Cross," she said clearly, "and I will never go with you." Silence fell like a dropped stone. Thornton's eyes hardened. "Well then," he said. His gun cleared leather faster than lightning. Fletcher moved at the same time. Gunfire exploded inside the old ranch house, shattering what little peace remained. And in that moment, the deserted Knox Ranch stopped being abandoned. It became a battlefield. Gunfire roared through the broken kitchen like thunder trapped inside wooden walls. Fletcher shoved Evelyn down behind an overturned table as Thornton's first bullet splintered the doorframe where Fletcher's head had been a second earlier. Wood chips flew through the air. Smoke filled the room. The sound of boots scrambling on the porch mixed with curses and shouted orders. Fletcher rolled across the floor, grabbed his Colt from the chair where he had dropped it earlier, and came up firing. His first shot hit the heavy man near the doorway. The second forced Thornton to dive behind the wall. The third man bolted sideways, trying to circle for a better angle. "Stay down!" Fletcher barked at Evelyn. But she was not frozen anymore. She had grabbed the fallen kitchen knife again. The third man lunged toward Fletcher, thinking the cowboy was distracted. He never saw Evelyn move. She slashed across his gun hand with quick, desperate precision. The man screamed, dropping his weapon. That scream was all Fletcher needed. He fired once more, forcing Thornton to retreat back through the doorway. Outside, horses shifted nervously. Men shouted in confusion. "Fall back!" Thornton yelled. "We'll smoke them out!" The hoofbeats retreated across the yard, but not far. Fletcher knew that tone. Thornton was not leaving. He was repositioning. Fletcher kept his gun trained on the doorway for a long moment before lowering it. His chest rose and fell hard. His ears rang from the gunshots. Across the room, Evelyn stood against the wall, breathing fast, the knife still in her hand. Her green eyes were no longer wild with fear. They were alive. "You could have run," she said quietly. "So could you," Fletcher replied. A sudden crack shattered the silence. A rifle shot exploded through the window, barely missing Fletcher's shoulder. Then another, and another. "They're surrounding the house," Fletcher muttered. Smoke drifted in through the back hallway. Evelyn turned pale. "They're burning it." Flames began licking at the rear wall, feeding on old dry timber. Within seconds, the abandoned ranch house became a furnace. Fletcher grabbed Evelyn's wrist. "There's a root cellar," he said. "Tunnel leads to the barn." She didn't question him. They dropped through the cellar door just as the ceiling above them caught fire. Heat chased them down the steps. The house groaned like a dying animal. In the dark cellar, Fletcher kicked aside old crates and found the loose boards he and his uncle had placed years ago when they were boys, pretending to be frontier scouts. "Through here," he said. They crawled through the narrow dirt tunnel, coughing as smoke seeped down after them. Above, the ranch crackled and roared. Dirt shook loose from the ceiling as bullets struck the burning walls. Evelyn clutched a leather satchel tightly against her chest. Fletcher noticed it even in the dark. They emerged under the barn floor. Fletcher pried up the planks and helped her out. His horse stood tied in the stall, restless from the smoke and gunfire. Outside, the ranch house was fully ablaze, lighting the desert night like a funeral pyre. "They'll think we're trapped inside," Fletcher whispered. They moved fast. He saddled the horse while Evelyn shoved the satchel into the saddlebag. When a shout rose from the yard, Fletcher swung up behind her and kicked the horse into motion. Gunshots cracked through the night, but the smoke and chaos covered their escape. They rode hard into the Badlands, the burning ranch shrinking behind them. Only when they reached a narrow canyon did Fletcher slow the horse. Evelyn swayed as she dismounted. Fletcher caught her before she collapsed. "You're hurt," he said. "It's nothing," she whispered. But it was not nothing. Blood stained her sleeve. Bruises marked her skin. He helped her sit near a small hidden spring among cottonwoods. Moonlight washed over the rocks. "Start talking," Fletcher said quietly. "What papers?" Evelyn pulled the satchel into her lap and opened it. Inside were ledgers, letters, shipping lists, official seals. "Judge Morrison," she said. "He's not just selling women. He's selling stolen army rifles, ammunition, smuggling everything across the border." Fletcher felt the world shift beneath him. My uncle." "They forged his name on the records," she said softly. "When he refused to help them, they killed him. Made it look natural." Fletcher's jaw tightened. She continued. "I was tutoring the judge's daughter when I overheard everything. I stole copies of the documents. I went to your uncle for help. He believed me." Her voice trembled now. 3 days later, he was dead. The wind moved through the canyon like a whisper of the past. Fletcher stared at the fire glow still faint on the horizon. "They burned my home tonight," he said. "They killed my uncle. They hunted you." He looked at her fully for the first time. "We're not running forever." Before she could respond, a distant sound carried through the canyon. Dogs. Tracking dogs. Evelyn's face went white. "They brought hounds." Fletcher was already on his feet. Into the creek," he said. "Water breaks the scent." They rode through Skeleton Creek for nearly a mile before cutting up into rocky terrain. The baying grew confused behind them, but it did not disappear. By morning, they reached an abandoned silver mine carved into the hillside. They hid inside. Minutes later, Thornton's voice echoed across the rocks. "Come out, Knox. Hand her over and you walk away." Fletcher crouched behind a boulder with Evelyn beside him. "You trust him?" she whispered. No. Gunfire erupted again. Thornton's men advanced, spreading out across the rocks. Fletcher fired steadily, dropping one. Evelyn, shaking but determined, picked up his spare pistol and fired toward the entrance to keep them back. They were outnumbered. Pinned. Inside the mine, Fletcher said. They retreated into the narrow shaft as bullets ricocheted off stone. Dust filled the air. They'll trap us, Evelyn said. Not if we don't stay here. Fletcher grabbed an old rusted pickaxe and attacked a thin rock wall at the back of the chamber. Behind them, Thornton's men crept into the shaft. The first one stepped into the chamber. Evelyn shot him. Fletcher broke through the rock. Cool air rushed in. Through there! They squeezed into a hidden limestone cave system and vanished into darkness just as Thornton reached the chamber. Shouts echoed behind them, but the caves twisted and branched like a maze. Hours later, they crawled out the far side of the mountain, miles from where they entered. They stumbled into the sunlight, alive. Below them lay the road to Bitter Creek. If we reach the Army patrol, Evelyn said, breathing hard, we can end this. Fletcher looked at her. Her hair was wild, her face bruised, her dress torn, but her eyes were fierce. We end it, he said. Gunshots cracked from the ridge above. Thornton's men had followed, and this time, they had reinforcements. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'm really curious to know. The first bullet struck the rock inches from Evelyn's head. Stone exploded into dust as Fletcher pulled her down behind a jagged ridge. Above them, silhouettes moved against the morning sun. Thornton had not come alone. He had brought half the desert with him. Move! Fletcher shouted, and they scrambled down the rocky slope toward the open ground leading to Bitter Creek. There was no more cover, no more hiding. Only distance, only speed. Thornton's men fired from above, trying to drive them into the open like cattle. Evelyn stumbled, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Fletcher caught her arm and half carried her forward. You go, she gasped. Take the papers. We finish this together, he said. Ahead, Bitter Creek shimmered in the heat. Small wooden buildings, a livery, a saloon, and blue uniforms outside the saloon doors. The Army patrol. Thornton saw it too. He rode down from the ridge, cutting them off before they could reach town. His horse skidded to a stop in the dust 20 yards away. Well now, he called out calmly, gun resting across his saddle horn. You almost made it. Behind him, the 6 armed men formed a half circle. Fletcher pushed Evelyn behind him and raised his Colt. You're done, Thornton. Thornton laughed. You really think those soldiers will believe you over Judge Morrison? Evelyn stepped out from behind Fletcher. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. I have proof. She pulled the satchel free and held it high. Shipping manifests, payment records, letters signed by Morrison himself. Thornton's smile faded. Kill them, he ordered quietly. Gunfire erupted. Fletcher moved first. His shot dropped the rider on Thornton's left. The second bullet knocked another from his saddle. Horses screamed and reared in panic. Evelyn ran, not away, toward town, toward the soldiers. A bullet tore through her sleeve, but she did not stop. Fletcher fired again, keeping Thornton pinned behind his horse. Go! He shouted. She burst into the street of Bitter Creek, screaming for the army. Blue uniforms turned. Captain William Harper stepped out of the saloon, hand on his saber. What in God's name? More gunfire cracked from the edge of town. Thornton's men charged in. Harper did not hesitate. Form line, he barked. Soldiers moved like a machine, rifles raised, shots fired in perfect rhythm. Thornton's riders fell one by one under trained volleys. Thornton himself tried to turn his horse. Fletcher shot the animal out from under him. Thornton hit the dirt hard. Within seconds, soldiers surrounded him. He reached for his gun. Fletcher stepped forward and kicked it away. "It's over," he said. Thornton looked up at him, hatred burning in his eyes. "You think this ends with me?" "Yes," Fletcher answered calmly. "It does." Harper's men bound Thornton's hands. Evelyn staggered forward and placed the satchel in Captain Harper's hands. "Judge Morrison," she said. "Gun running, murder, human trafficking. Everything is there." Harper flipped through the documents quickly. His jaw tightened. "You've just handed me the biggest corruption case this territory has ever seen." Within hours, federal riders were dispatched. By nightfall, Judge Morrison was arrested at his estate. Within 3 days, his entire operation collapsed. Warehouses seized, accounts frozen, names exposed, and the girls who had been hidden across borders were brought home. Weeks later, Mount Fletcher stood in the rebuilt frame of Knox Ranch. The fire had taken the old house, but it had not taken the land. It had not taken his will. Workers hammered fresh beams into place. The barn was already repaired. Cattle grazed again in the fields. Evelyn stood beside him, watching the sunrise wash gold across the desert. "You could have left," she said softly. "So could you." She looked at him. The fear that once lived in her eyes was gone. In its place was strength. "You saved me," she said. "No," Fletcher replied. "You saved yourself. I just stood beside you." She smiled, the first true smile he had ever seen from her. Silence settled between them, warm and steady. Then she said the words that changed everything. "You'll sleep with me now." Fletcher blinked. She did not blush. She did not look ashamed. She looked certain. I don't mean out of fear," she continued. "I mean because I choose you. Because I'm not hiding anymore. Because I want a life, not just survival." The desert wind moved softly around them. Fletcher stepped closer. "You sure about that, Miss Cross?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He took her hands. "This ranch," he said, "won't just be rebuilt. It'll be ours." She stepped into his arms. No fear, no running, just two people who had faced fire, bullets, betrayal, and death, and chosen each other. 6 months later, Knox Ranch stood stronger than ever. Evelyn ran a small school for ranch hands and their children in the evenings. Fletcher built fences, hired men, and turned the land fertile again. Judge Morrison and Jake Thornton both swung from the gallows in public view. Justice had come. But the real victory stood on that porch at sunrise. Evelyn Knox. Her auburn hair caught the light as she laughed at something Fletcher whispered in her ear. The virgin woman who once hid in a deserted ranch now ruled it, not with fear, but with love. And every night, when the desert cooled and the stars burned bright above the American frontier, she chose him again, and he chose her, side by side, for as long as the sun would rise over the Wild West.